Hi guys, thanks for tuning in again to Burnout Burns. My name is Ken,
And I'm Nicole,
and welcome to our podcast series, Burnout Burns.
where we talk all about burning out, the factors, the signs, and how to lead a more sustainable life in Singapore.
Okay, so what's up for today, Nicole?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm supposed to tell this. It's not really a joke. It's not meant to be funny, okay? There was this hostage situation in Japan, Tokyo. So I was quite interested to read the comments to see what was going on and find out more. It was a serious situation, but in the comments, there were some Singaporeans who were obviously worried about whether they could continue their Japan trip, right? Despite this very dangerous thing happening. So there was this comment like, oh, don't worry, Singaporeans. I know we're all very worried about whether we can still continue for our Japan trip. And then there was someone who said like, I already applied for my annual leave. It's already approved. I spent a lot of money. I am going there no matter what. I rather die in Japan than die in Singapore. So I mean Singaporeans and their sense of humor. There were no serious casualties. Like I think nobody died, if I understand it correctly. But it was just funny, like the comments that people were making about their holiday trip and how Singaporeans are super protective about their holidays and their trips because we hardly get to go and it's a very precious time for us.
Okay, so today we're going to spend a little bit more time discussing and dissecting something very important to do with the workplace. Is work taking up too much time in our lives? And this got me looking back, right? Where did this all originate from? When did we start adopting this 40-hour work week in our lives? And that took me back all the way to the 1930s during the Great Depression. And this was a time of economic downturn. People were losing their jobs. People had to work extremely hard at very low wages. I'm thinking that as they were doing this, they must have experienced some sort of burnout, and there was a need to legislate things. So there was an establishment of the 40-hour work week to combat this situation. Also to introduce this idea of overtime pay for work that was done outside of this 40 hours. So this legislation actually helped to institutionalize the 40-hour work week in the US. Right? So remembering that this time was actually very unique culturally speaking, because people had to work hard, technology was lacking, and also there were a lack of labor laws, right? And out of economic necessity, people had to pull in longer hours as a result. So my question today to all of us listening is, does the 40-hour work week still apply? So particularly in Singapore, I think talking about the way we work right nowadays, I think COVID has changed the way we work. And I think during the time of COVID, it also helped people realize that there were some things that were perhaps not getting enough attention, as it had us recalibrating our priorities. Talking about this on the side as well, I think some of y'all might have heard that, there's a call for moving to a 4-day work week. And that is, to me, a trend shift towards work-life balance. Probably a indication that maybe our workforce could be overtaxed and overworked as a result. So my first question to you, Nicole, today is, in your opinion, as Singaporeans, right, in our Singapore work culture, do you feel like we are working too much?
Okay, so I think that it's not a super straightforward question, and I also think it depends on the intensity while we are working at the workplace. I think that the way we work now, it requires a lot more brain power than it used to. A lot of decision making, a lot of strategic thinking, a lot of problem solving, and that used to be like a much smaller percentage of our workload, but now it constantly, every day there is like all this brain work that needs to get done, and we spend a lot of time in front of the computer sitting down on our ass and like using our brains. And I think that there's only so much the brain can take. And this imbalance of like physical activity or physical work that is required for us to do versus brain work, and that change in the type of work we are doing does contribute to whether we experience burnout or not, because then how much downtime does the brain need and how much focus time does the brain need. So for example, what I do requires a lot of creative problem solving, a lot of ideation, and a lot of ideation comes from research, which looks often like you are doing nothing, like you're just watching social media or just consuming social media or watching a movie and all this. But these are what contributes to an idea. But we are often expected to churn out ideas without leaving enough room for the recipe to develop or for the ingredients to come together. And then at the end, when I'm usually, very creatively burnt out or, having decision fatigue, I'm like, I just want to do something simple. Like I'll fold the clothes, I'll hold the light, I will hold the fan, at a photo shoot. My brain is just too tired to make another decision or to make another call.
Yeah, I guess in every job there are certain highs and certain lows and certain momentums, right? We cannot always operate in that extremely high area, right? Like you feel like you are overcharging or supercharging your brain in
Yeah.
order to achieve a task. And I think that sometimes if you do it from time to time, that's okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like there needs to be enough, like, cool it off, there
yeah,
should be some
like
sort
a
of
cycle,
momentum, right?
like a lull period and a peak period.
If we keep operating at high paces and do not allow ourselves to rest, the body to recharge in that sense, then will that affect our returns in terms of like what we are able to produce at work and things like that?
Yeah, I think definitely there is a diminishing, return. I think in our parents' generation, the boomer generation, they experience a lot of success by this mantra of just put in the work, put in the hard work, and you will get the success. And it has been true for them. And I think they pass on this mantra of success down to the next generation, the Gen X. And it has also worked for them to a certain degree. But by the time it comes to us, the millennials, it's sort of reaching this diminishing return where there is only so much effort and time you can put in that is sustainable. And in fact, sometimes we put in so much of this extra effort and time, but does it have that kind of ROI that we are looking for? Or are we just like not getting compensated for the extra time? Or in fact, now we even have cases where you are being promoted just in title, but not, you're not compensated for this promotion. So you're actually getting more work, more responsibility for the same amount of money.
Okay, so that leads me to an article that we have here, and it's very apt. Okay, this was actually published by Mothership, and it says Singaporeans, you are all officially working too hard at 45 hours per week. At this moment, maybe you guys can share with us in the comments how many hours you guys pull in per week. It seems that we are very fast accelerating towards a trend of working 50 hours per week. And this article goes on to talk about the top 5 hardest working cities in the world. And Singapore actually ranked second. This is not something that you really congratulate yourselves about. And of course, number 1, we have Tokyo. Okay, on the flip side, I would like you to guess, okay, without looking, okay, which are the countries,
I'm not looking, my eyesight is not that good.
which is the country that is ranked the best work-life balance in the world? What do you think is the answer to that?
I have a friend who lives and works in Sweden, if I'm not wrong. And I believe that area,
Okay.
is actually is known to have very good work-life balance. So it's definitely not an Asian country. So I'm guessing it's either Sweden or Finland. Finland has one of the best education systems apparently.
Okay,
I think
you can
Germany
stop
also.
there.
Okay,
It's
I
very
got
good.
it.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so your friend works in Sweden. That is number 5. Okay,
Ah.
5th best ranked work-life balance. Number 1, you mentioned Finland. Yes. And let me share
Hey,
with
number
you.
2, Germany. Not bad. I got it. Oh.
Yeah, and you are also right to say that actually none of the Asian countries appear on the list, and that's actually pretty sad. You guys must be asking yourself at home, right? Does this long amount of hours actually lead to productivity? And conversely, right, if I'm one of these countries with work-life balance, does that also mean that I am not as productive? Okay,
Yeah.
so let's just take a look at it from a numbers perspective. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Statistics in 2017 actually showed that the average Japanese worker generated US $46 towards their country's GDP. The average Finn actually generated US $64 per hour. Okay, that meant that working 125 more hours over the year led to lower productivity for the Japanese. So this actually sums up that not all the time longer hours lead to more productivity.
In fact, it shows that it doesn't. Yeah, so it shows that people in Finland actually have a $20 more productivity, right?
For less
$20
hours
value
put in.
more
Yeah.
for lesser hours put in.
In Singapore, the stats for us is that we're actually pulling in 45 to 46 hours of work per week. And that was back in 2019. I'm sure that as we progress now, 4 or 5 years later, like, what do you think we're pulling in now? I think that if we continue trending upwards, obviously we'll be trending towards the 50 hours work week. So in your opinion, right, what do you think is the mentality of Singaporeans nowadays when it comes to working overtime? Do you know of many Singaporeans who have to pull in overtime hours?
I can clearly see a generational difference. I think most boomers are retired or retiring. The Gen X, they definitely are pretty okay with putting in the extra amount of hours. They are very driven in a sense. And then the millennials are trying to find that balance because a lot of the millennials have children, have young-ish children. So they also have to make time for that. And then we have our Gen Zs who come in and they are very clear about their value system and they do not want work to take over their life and they believe very strongly in work-life balance.
Can we maybe dive in a little bit deeper to try to understand what is constituting to people working overtime? Is it a efficiency issue? What is occupying the time at work nowadays?
So from what I hear, like, from social media, forums and talking to people who work in different industries and different areas of work, is that meeting takes up a lot of time. When I first started in a corporate, one of my first few experiences of being in a corporate working place and leading a team and all, and I conducted my first well, it wasn't my first meeting. One of my first few meetings with a new colleague, I wrapped up that meeting in like 15 minutes. And then she made this comment and said like, wow, that was a really fast meeting. I'm surprised and I love it. And I was like, yeah, but I don't have anything else. I'm not going to drag on a meeting just because, I want to sound important or anything. As long as we got the work that we need to get discussed done, I think that's it. Like, let's move on and be more efficient with our time. Not everyone is like that. But there are some people who are not very efficient with the time and they will call for meetings and the meetings will drag long. And at the end of the meeting, we're not even sure if we achieved what we wanted to achieve.
Yeah, so I think establishing like clear goals within the context of why are we even having this, and to step through maybe preparing ahead, maybe some of the discussion points, and so that everybody understands like why they are there. This idea of too many meetings is also like the idea that if I have a team and I'm a manager, I should try to bring my entire team to as many meetings as possible to see if they have any inputs or to see if they are able to contribute in certain ways. My team is a limited resource. Just like if we have money, right? I feel like we have to put our money to good use. Everybody has a limited amount of money, but how you choose to use that money in an effective way is actually just as important as when you look at a staff as a resource. You would deploy them effectively in a way that gives you the best returns, right? In terms of alignment, in terms of their gifts and strengths, they are in your meeting for a purpose. If, let's say, a staff spends all day going for a meeting, then how about their own work that they're supposed to do? Yeah, some of the things that I hear people complaining about is that, hey, I spend most of my working hours just running from meeting to meeting, but I don't have time to do my own deep work.
So having to go to so many meetings during the day then results in you having this backlog of tasks that you need to address, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about like, okay, so before you quit, let's say you already reached this stage of burnout. And I think that sometimes anger is more of a signal that, hey, maybe a boundary is crossed. We're not always right when we are angry about something, but I think it's sort of like a signal. So we don't really always need to respond in anger, but we can use that anger as sort of like a guide, translate it into courage to do something that you usually don't dare to do. And if you're already thinking of quitting, this is probably the pre-step, that you can try, which is to have that tough conversation and ask your boss if you really need to be at this meeting.
Yeah. So one of the very helpful things is always communicate, right? I think that your point about anger actually encouraging you to vocalize your thoughts, right? Because you might be having some frustration and you might also be hoping that your boss can see it. Like you expect your boss to mind read, and I don't think that is fair as well. Some of us have different levels of self-awareness, and not all the time your bosses can see that you're struggling internally. So I think for us to vocalize it helps your boss to picture it, communicate your needs to your boss.
As Singaporeans, we have this very I don't want to bring it up. I don't want to very non-confrontational. So for example, if my boss asks me to attend a meeting and I'm really so busy that day with tasks that are not meeting, I'm technically free. I can attend the meeting, but it doesn't mean that I'm free because I have work to do. My time slot is not occupied by somebody else. So then I would go to my boss and say, hey boss, I'm being asked to attend this meeting. I just wanted to check with you, what's my role in this meeting? What are we going to be discussing? And how high of a priority is it that I sit in on this meeting because I have this task that is urgent and I would like to get it done by the end of the day. If I attend that meeting, I will not be able to do this task. Are you okay with that? And then your boss will then be forced to articulate the reason for this meeting. What is your reason to be there for? And if you physically attending the meeting is the best efficient way for you to contribute to this discussion. If it's not, then you can excuse yourself from this meeting, reply and say, hope you guys have a efficient meeting or a fruitful meeting. I will chime in my thoughts if any. Feel free to let me know whatever questions you have, in my area of expertise. Sometimes we just assume that we should take on all the responsibilities of everything. And then that's why we put in extra hours, because we don't want to trouble our managers or our boss to prioritize for us. But technically, that is their job, to prioritize the tasks for you. Sometimes in Singapore, it's just everything is important, everything must be done. But that's not true. My understanding of work is that you pay me for this amount of hours and you're going to get this amount of hours. And I already put in my 100% all the time for this amount of hours. Unless you are willing to pay for my overtime, otherwise, please stick to the working hours. And if I'm already prepared to leave, in a sense, then I would be more daring to push the responsibility back to my manager or boss to manage my time for me, to manage the tasks for me.
Thanks for giving us that very helpful sharing. I think a lot of us needed to hear that, because in terms of work, there's this constant struggle between trying to complete everything, and sometimes it's not within a reasonable construct. So something's got to give, right? We shared this before. We can't have everything's a priority, everything's important. Like you said, I think you clarified that well, that our managers are supposed to prioritize for us, especially if we're not sure which one we should give up. What are the things that we should make way?
But of course, sometimes it doesn't really happen in the real workplace. There's a lot of poor managers out there. And that's why there's this whole skill set of managing up and managing down. But that is also a reason why we often get really tired. A lot of time, the energy comes from managing all these things, instead of actually doing the actual work.
In my last catch up with some of my friends, actually, the things they had to do, I actually asked this question to them, and they told me that even if they were doing deep work, they would actually block out their calendars. At least you are sending a signal to whoever's looking at your calendar that is protected time, and that you'll be actually using their time to do something so that they know not to disturb you. So some of my friends actually block out a day to do that deep work.
Yeah, I think that's very helpful, because you yourself can visually see that I am not available, I cannot accept this meeting.
Yeah. So maybe the idea here is if you have something important that you plan to do, put it ahead in your calendar first, so that you can see that is devoted time that you have actually demarked for deep work. Yeah, so Nicole, is there any other things that can help us set healthier work boundaries?
Yeah, so for me, I had to really make a stand, and I don't think any of my clients are unhappy about this. In fact, some of my team members that I work with are very happy about this, that I don't actually reply after working hours and on the weekends unless it's a true emergency, which oftentimes it really isn't. I had to have a cut-off time, which is usually either 6 or 6:30 max. And that is when I stop working. I switch off my phone. I do my last social media post of the day, and I don't look at my work phone. I have a work phone, and I had to separate it because I understand some people are working after hours because of their life situation, the way they work. It's fine. Everyone has different styles, but I also understand that having a work phone is a luxury. But for me, it was a luxury that is worth having, because then I don't have to worry about alienating my family, which is my family or friends whom I'm supposed to be in contact with anyway after working hours,
Of course,
right?
because one of the saddest things that if we go for these things and gatherings, right, we are actually making meaningful connections with people. And the last thing that we want to do is to not engage them and to be looking at our phones and
Yeah.
also be looking at our work tasks. And
Yeah.
I think this is an issue about headspace. There is a growing trend that we are physically present at some of these things, but we are not mentally and emotionally there for our family.
Yeah, so I actually was listening to this podcast about how it's important to let people feel that they matter, and that if you are using your mobile phone or whatever, engaged in a task that is not at the present moment, and you are with somebody, you are kind of signaling to them that, sorry, but at this moment, you're on the back seat, you don't really matter. That thing matters to me more than what we have here. And I think people don't really like to admit it if they are the ones using their phone during interaction that is supposed to be, at present moment. But I do feel that way when someone else does it to me, that okay, I'm not so important, that thing is more important. So I personally would prefer to not look at my phone when I'm interacting with a loved one or someone that I feel is important to me at that moment.
Yeah, for those who are watching at home, don't take this like a personal attack, okay?
Definitely it's not like an attack or anything, but I think that it's just important to be aware. And if you are aware and you know that it causes someone else to feel that way, then you can make a choice. Yeah. And then the other reason why I also set this kind of hard time boundary for me for work is that because, to be honest, sometimes work is fun. And then I'll start thinking and thinking and thinking, and then my brain like goes on this like adrenaline rush when it's supposed to be winding down and getting ready for sleep.
Yes.
And then it becomes really difficult to fall asleep because I'm thinking about work. I had this idea and then da 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 da. So I'm very strict about it because to me, sleep is really, really important. It affects my performance for everything. Okay, with my personal life and in like my work life. So to me, having that amount of sleep is very important to me, and it's kind of non-negotiable. So I really want to fall asleep at the right timing. And so that is the boundary that I make. It actually helps my work performance to be better. Instead, if I compromise and do all these late night things, next day I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be like a zombie.
So it leads to productivity issues and burnout issues, which actually this is a two-part episode because today I think we don't want to keep you here, forever. In the next episode, we will discuss some tangible steps to take, an exercise that you can do if you're planning to quit your job or pivot to another job. If you have questions like, is there a process that we should undertake towards our dream job? What can we do to maximize success? Stay tuned on the next episode of Burnout Burns. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.